One day in 1968, a boy was born in El Paso, Texas. And years later, he would become one of the most notorious serial killer in American history. I'm a devil hunter, and our killer today is a Richard Ramirez. Like many serial killers, Ramirez had a difficult and violent childhood. Once again, we see familiar stories of abused father who would beat and hurt his son. But there was more. Richard had an elder cousin named Miguel. Miguel often told him about the stories of his experience in the Vietnam War, and little by little, those stories made Richard more interested to the violent behavior. As he entered the teenage years, Ramirez became addicted to the drugs. This would become the beginning of his journey into the crime world. In his early adulthood, Ramirez moved to Los Angeles, where his drug addiction became worse and worse. One thing that made Richard Ramirez different from many other serial killers was that he didn't have a clear pattern or specific way of killing. Why do I mean by that? For example, he didn't usually follow his victim beforehand. Sometimes he would simply enter a random house and attack an elderly woman inside. In the same ways, this made things harder for the police because Richard Ramirez had no clear pattern. It was much harder for investigators to connect his crime. And as you probably know, for a serial killer, having a clear pattern or a planned murders is what everything we know about them. His first known victim was a Jenny Winkov. In 1984, Richard killed her inside her own house. And just like the way he choosing the victim, his method of killing was also random and unpredictable. He shot some of his victims, he strangled others with the rope, and in same cases he attacked them with a knife. Jenny's murder was beginning of the story of Night Stalker, a name that almost 4 decades later people still remember. At night, Richard Ramirez would break into people's house through the window, and he would kill victim and then steal from the house, and then leave behind a crime scene for the investigator for examine. Little by little, fear spread across Los Angeles. Ramirez's victim and the growing number of unsolved cases terrified the people throughout the city. And the detective still had no idea who is the killer was and what he wants or why he committing that crime. But Ramirez's biggest mistake as a killer was the evidence he left behind. One night after secretly broke into another home and killing the victim, he left several important clues behind. By then, that murder had already attracted the huge media attention, and once investigators identified their main suspect as Richard Ramirez, his face was everywhere. Richard left Los Angeles for a while and hoping that people would slowly forget about him and that unsolved cases connected to him. But the final mistake of the Night Stalker was the nail of his coffin.
Confer with his client without the
I don't want to confer with him.
gentleman there, and perhaps he can at least advise Mr. Ramirez of his legal options. The gentleman standing there in front of Mr. Ramirez really have no standing before the
That's
court.
correct.
They do to me.
At this point, the court is only putting the matter over 2 days. If at that point there is no time waiver, matter would be set for preliminary examination within 8 days. Matter is recessed until October 24th, 8:30 in this court.
Is it early in the morning?
One day, when Richard Ramirez returned to the Los Angeles, people immediately recognized him, and several people went after him. After a short chase, they caught Richard Ramirez and brutally beat him. A few minutes later, the police arrive and pull out the Richard Ramirez out of the angry crowd. And just like that, one of the American most notorious killer handed over the police by people. But Richard Ramirez's story didn't end there. Because of how famous the case had become, his trial attracted huge attention from the television and newspaper across the country. Unlike the most killer who tried to prove their innocence and convince the jury to give them the lighter sentence, Richard Ramirez would often smile in a court and he seemed like he proud of what he's done. The final result was almost obvious from the beginning, the death penalty. But Ramirez never sit on the execution chair. Instead, he spent nearly 30 years in prison. Because of his behavior in a court and his interest to the Satanism, Ramirez even gained a devoted number of fans in prison. And actually, he married in prison. And honestly, this is one of those strangest one. In the end, in 2013, Richard Ramirez died in prison at age of 53 from the cancer. And he was never executed.
I won't come back in here again. You understand that? This trial is a joke.
When the defense is going to file their response.
I'm a devil hunter, and if you like this content, please subscribe to channel, send this video to your friend and like video. And if you have any idea about the next killer we must cover, tell me in a comment. And like always, until next time, adios. I don't believe it. I don't tap the record. Are you kidding me? Actually, again. Damn, the murders had already attracted huge media addiction. Now I say addiction. And no, attention. Again. Episode 3 cut 2 true. Who actually married him? Thinks he's a serial killer and he's in a prison, and he married? How?